Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. We have got falling water temperatures here in Wisconsin. We're just starting the fall period. And what that means is you've got an opportunity for some fantastic topwater action. I think there's a lot of anglers out there that don't realize how good the topwater bite can be going into the fall period. Generally speaking, for me, I'll throw a topwater all the way up until generally like the upper 50-degree range. But right now, like when that water temp's in the 60-degree range, that's one of the prime times to be throwing a topwater bait. And it often goes very overlooked. So I've got for you some of my favorite fall topwater baits. They're not generally the same baits I would throw any other time of the year. I do feel like in the fall period, your topwater choices are critical to your success. Generally speaking, your faster moving baits are probably going to get you more strikes. So we're going to go over some of these and I'll provide with you when and where I like to throw them. Before I do get into that, though, I do want to remind you, I do lake breakdowns with fishthemoment.com. I've got breakdowns where we provide a bunch of different waypoints, picking out different patterns for a specific season on individual lakes around the country. So check those out. I'll put the link in the video description. Also, if you want to support the channel, please be using my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link to purchase tackle. The little bit I make from that goes right back into making content for everyone out there, hopefully helping everyone catch a few extra bass. So during the fall season, one of the reasons the topwater bite becomes very good is because you tend to have some of the weaker forage species begin to die off. Now, I'm not talking about a straight shad die off where the water temp gets down to such a temperature that you have a huge population of the shad die. I'm just generally saying that, as you start progressing into the fall period with your falling water temperatures, a lot of times your shad start making big migrational movements and you have some stress on those shad with the falling water temperatures mixed in, and you do tend to get some die off. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is the primary forage for the bass, no matter where you're at in the country, is going to be some form of shad species or minnow species or panfish species. In either case, because you're talking about a period where the fish are really honing in on those, your easy meals are going to be a much easier thing for the bass to key in on. And that's what a topwater bait does. It really does a great job at mimicking one of two things. It mimics either a dying fish, or it usually imitates a fish that is chasing something on the surface, which then opens itself up to being an easy target for the bass. Bass love to take advantage of other species that are concentrated on what they're doing and feeding on. When I was younger, I always used to watch, we had a house that used to get a big honeycomb of bluegills when they were spawning. And you could stand on the dock and you could watch the bass that were feeding on the bluegill and the honeycombs. And generally speaking, the bass would wait for a primary ambush opportunity. And a lot of times that would come down to the bluegill going into a feeding mode. So like I would go down on the dock and I would throw stuff for the bluegill to eat. And when I would do that, the bass would actually ambush the bluegill while the bluegill were trying to eat the breadcrumbs and stuff that I was throwing in the water. So it's really interesting to see that. But a topwater bait a lot of times emulates a fish that is preying in on something else that's on the surface, which creates that good opportunity. In either case, topwaters present themselves as a good opportunity for fish to feed. And when you're moving into the fall period, you tend to have a lot of fish that are keying in on those bait fish or dying fish of whatever species it is. And that's why I think it's so important to use topwaters in the fall. They just become very easy meals and they tend to generate really good strikes. And that's for all species. The other thing, a lot of times, because you do have fish that are keying in specifically on bait fish, the bass like to push the bait fish to the surface to feed. So they're always tending to look up a little bit to see, to feed. And from that standpoint, that's where your topwater is. So one of my absolute favorites, guys, no matter where you're at, is a big walking topwater bait. This is a Reaction Innovation Vixen. That's one of my favorites. You want a bigger topwater bait for a couple of reasons. Most importantly, you can throw it a country mile. So if you do get fish that come up schooling anywhere near the boat, you're going to be able to cast it to them. The other is you can work this bait extremely quickly over the surface. And the fish a lot of times are preying on a little bit larger bait fish. You know, you've got your young of the year bait fish that are more to a mature size at that point. And a bigger profile bait just gives the bass something to really key in on. But a big walking topwater bait, absolute must have, whether you're fishing down south where you got a bunch of schooling fish or fish that are starting to really stage and feed on, you know, cane piles or brush piles or big points. If you're up here in the North Country and you fish rivers like the Mississippi River, it's a great bait on wing dams. It's just a really good bait. And to me, your walking topwater baits shine during the fall period. Next up, you got to have some good moving baits to cover water. That's when you're talking about something like a Berkeley Chopo, just a bait that you can go down the bank, cover in a ton of water. If they come up busting behind you, you can throw it to them. But it's just a great bait at covering water. And the reality is you do have a lot of fish in transitional phases during this period. So you don't have as many schools of fish. You have a lot more that are starting to move closer to the bank, a lot that are traveling the bank in certain highway travel routes to move into their fall locations. And a Chopo is just a great bait at covering water. You pick it up, you cast it, you move, you cover a ton of water. Along those same lines, you got to have something like the Rusty Squeaker buzz bait. This is a Picasso bait, very similar to the Chopo. These two baits to me are interchangeable in a lot of instances, but it really comes down to if I'm fishing open water, I like the Chopo. I'd rather have treble hooks. If I'm fishing anywhere where I'm making really tight casts, so maybe you're going down a bank that's got a couple of docks mixed in or some laydowns mixed in, you want to get tight to the cover without getting snagged, that's when I go with a buzz bait like the Rusty Squeaker. The point here is both these baits are similar in that they are great baits at covering water, and they generate some absolute excellent strikes and big bites. And you can hear this, the rusty squeaking kind of sound on this. Just wants to squeak and kind of chirp a little bit. Really great buzz bait. And then the last topwater that I like to throw as we're getting to cooler water temps is a Wakebait. So this is an old Bomber Long A. This is the bait that actually got me to do this video. I just picked this up at a garage sale. Couldn't pass it up. $2 total score. Wakebaits are excellent, excellent cold water topwaters. In my opinion, they're kind of the first topwater to throw in the spring, and they're the first or the last topwater bait to put down in the fall. I've caught fish all the way down in the mid 40-degree water temps with it, but you cast it out, a slow retrieve, let it just create its S wake on the surface. You need to have some calm conditions to do it, but it's such an easy, slow moving meal for the bass that it is a great topwater bait in your cold water periods. So these are it. I mean, I love throwing topwater baits, but these are the ones that I throw. I don't throw the poppers. I don't throw prop baits. I really stick to the faster moving topwater baits or a really slow moving wake bait when the time comes. But don't forget about topwater baits as the water temps continue to drop into the fall period. Hopefully this was helpful for you. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.